example, you'll find that there's lots of masajid, yeah, lots of...
This brother is talking the G circle here right now.
No.
So this is the Muslim G circle.
So I'm always open to be corrected as well, yeah? But there's a lot of
I'm sorry, bro.
there's a lot of discrimination. Can
I get to a circle?
Who's that, Saeed? Yes, Saeed.
Anyway, thank you very much for that.
Listen, they are traitors.
Who are?
And then these people you're talking about, they are traitors.
What, the blacks?
Okay, and
the blacks are traitors?
Yes, everywhere you go, there are traitors all over Africa.
Okay, thank you for that.
With the outsiders.
Okay,
we
good.
know this,
Good, yeah. And you know what? Another point is, I'm happy you said that. No, I'm happy you said. Anyways, no. Okay, I don't want to hear you.
Africans were killed. Okay.
About this generally, the Muslims have been quiet about this generally, and the Westerners have been quiet about this. Therefore,
Sorry, yeah, because as black Muslims, yeah, and black Africans, we have actually spoken about the plight. It's just
of the Central Africans.
Yeah, I find there's lots of masajid, yeah, lots of...
This brother is talking the G circle here right now.
No.
So this is the Muslim G circle.
I'm always open to be corrected as well, yeah? But there's a lot of
I'm sorry, bro.
there's a lot of discrimination.
Can I get to a circle?
Who's that, Saeed? Yes, Saeed.
We got the G circle going on here.
No, but I'm wait. Hey, it's your chance to have your voice on Saeed's channel, though. Is that the one?
Oh no, that's all right.
The good Muslim.
Yes.
Today we're talking about black issues. Seriously.
Yeah. So
you're
Mohammed,
making a point.
Yeah. So what can we do, yeah, to make the black Muslims, yeah, more inclusive within the wider Islamic community? Because at the moment, we're being pushed to the outside. Yes, that's a general statement.
I want to make a point on that. Yeah. Everyone comes into the G circle, but you put your hand up when you're ready for action.
It's a B-Tech G circle.
Okay, brothers, this is a good point. Listen, I want to make a point today because I feel like he's absolutely right. I feel like there is a hierarchy, a sociological hierarchy within the Muslim world, whereby black Muslims unfortunately are put somewhere in the bottom of that hierarchy. Why is that? Because unfortunately, like anything else, most things are capitalistic in the world that we live in now. And once again, unfortunately, the sub-Saharan African placement actually doesn't allow black people to be able to have that economic leverage. For that reason, they've been sidelined. I'll tell you something, guys, and I've never said this, and I've always wanted to say this, yeah? Thank you, brother. I've always wanted to say this. Wallahi. I've always wanted to make a campaign about this, and I'm happy here in the G Circle that we're going to make this new G Circle, right? I'm making this campaign here and today, because I've never made this point before. Among the most persecuted people in the whole world are in a country called the Central African Republic. This is in the center of Africa. Now, did you know this? I want the people to know this, yeah? People are being eaten. Wait a minute, what did you say, my friend? People are being eaten alive. Now, this might sound absolutely disgusting, and it might sound ridiculous, but people are being eaten. Now, I don't see this on the front pages of any news stream, but Muslims, because there's a small minority of Muslims in the Central African Republic. That's a black country in the center of Africa, where the majority of people are not Muslims, but the minorities are. And they're actually being persecuted to the extent whereby there are case studies where they're being eaten alive. Now, I say this. There are two people that are to blame for this. I'm going to put them in order of blameworthiness. Number one is the Muslims. The Muslims are to blame for this. They should be blamed more than the Westerners, because apart from maybe today, you might have never heard of this before as a Muslim, that there are people in the Central African Republic, and everyone's homework today is to go home and to research the case of the Central African Republic, a country in the center of Africa where people are being eaten alive because of the religion, okay? But they're black people at the end of the day, so it's not just Muslims' rights here, it's black people's rights. Muslims have to speak up about this.
They might be black, but do they behave like black? They don't behave like black.
Okay, we'll come here in the G circle.
No, I'm not going to go into any circle with you.
But you're
My point
interrupting the
is,
circle.
they came from
You're breaking
Yemen.
it.
Yeah,
Okay, some
Who came from
they
Yemen?
claim to be
Who came
Arabs.
from
Okay,
Yemen?
Who came from
They
Yemen?
claim to be Arabs. They claim to be Arabs.
Brother, you're
They
chatting
behave
rubbish,
like Arabs.
respectfully.
They're in
Who came
Africa
from-
and they
Who
persecute
came from-
Africans,
who came
and they've
from
been
Yemen?
working with the
Who came
invaders,
from Yemen?
with the land grabbers, with the
Yeah.
thieves, with the
Alright.
rapists,
Alright,
Who
cool,
came from
cool.
Yemen?
slave traders.
Who came from Yemen?
In the Central African Republic.
Don't
Oh,
come
we're
here
chatting
and tell
rubbish, man.
us
Get out of here.
that they have no right to be
We're
here.
chatting rubbish,
They have no
man.
In the
right
Central, I'm talking about
to be there.
I'm talking about indigenous blacks. I'm talking about indigenous blacks.
They don't
No,
behave.
don't worry. Aki, brother, I'm talking about
They've
indigenous.
been working with the Arabs to kidnap the Africans.
Who are you talking about? They are Africans.
Yes,
I'm talking about Africans.
They've been working
I'm
with the
talking
Arabs to
about
kidnap
Africans.
To say, come in it.
Anyways, thank you very much for that.
Listen, they are traitors. Okay?
Who are?
And then these people you're talking about, they are traitors.
What, the blacks?
Okay, and
The blacks are traitors?
Yes, everywhere
They're
you go, there are
traitors.
traitors all over Africa.
Okay, thank you for
Working
that.
with the outsiders. Okay,
Okay,
we know
good,
this,
good, yeah. And do you know what? Another point is, I'm happy you said that. No, I'm happy you said. Anyways, no. Okay, I don't want to hear you.
Africans were killed, okay? Because of these traitors.
Where is Central African
Don't come
Republic?
here with this-
Where is it? Give me a country it's neighboring to.
All of Africa.
Where is Central
All over
Africa? Where is the Central
All
African
over
Republic?
Africa.
One time.
All
All
over
right, cool. Anyway, I don't want to hear you. I don't want to hear your voice.
Listen.
I don't want to hear your voice anymore. Anyways,
They have no right.
so here,
Hold on. One at a time.
yeah, one at a time.
Yeah, what you saying?
Yeah. So the point we're saying is that this guy was saying they were Yemeni. No, they're not Yemeni.
Stay on your track.
Yeah, our track is this, that these guys are Central Africans. They're actually black people living in the Central African Republic. You can watch the videos on this, yeah? We're saying this, the blacks have been quiet about this, generally. The Muslims have been quiet about this, generally. And the Westerners have been quiet about this. Therefore,
On that story, yeah, because as black Muslims, yeah, and black Africans, we have actually spoken about the plight. It's just
Of the Central Africans?
Yeah, we've known about
Fair
it
enough.
for years, but we
Fair
haven't
enough.
been given
the platform.
right.
Okay, now you have the chance. Now we have the chance. Today we're talking about the killing. No, we're talking about the persecution of black people. Yeah, and this is a joint venture. Why? Because to be honest with you here, the Central African Republic is as African as you can possibly get.
Yes,
We're not talking.
take his land. He works every day.
It's as African as you can possibly get. It's not North Africa, and it's not South Africa. It's not a white man in the south, and it's not an Arab man in the north.
Is there a question you're asking?
It's not a question, but this is the point I wanted to make. So here I feel like all of us have to unite on this issue, on the issue of the plight of the Central Africans. Now another point is I want people to realize this, yeah? The brother here was talking about, I know. I'm still saying this, yeah? There is this.
No, the question was asked,
Cool.
what are Muslims doing to work on the oppression of the darkest melanated Muslims?
The Central African
Now, you're talking
Republic.
about black Africans eating black Africans, right?
Yes.
I don't know how that is connected to this gentleman's question.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
do. So I want to hear how that is connected, because that's an interesting thing.
Yeah. So that's the point. What I'm trying to say is that here, I made the initial point. I'm not sure if you guys were here, so let me just repeat it, just for the sake of repeating it. I made the initial point that black people, unfortunately, because of their socio-economic placement, because of the capitalistic world that we live in, and because of the fact that they don't have as much money, in a word, as other people in the world, that they haven't had the platform or the ability to be able to put their case forward in a way that needs to be put forward. Whether they belong to the Muslim Ummah, or whether they want to make this case generally to the rest of the world, internationally. And today I want to focus on the Central African Republic. Right. So I use that as a case study to show that these minorities of Muslims in the Central African Republic are being eaten alive physically, literally, by other people
You've
that
said
are
that now like 17 times.
Good.
So I know that
That's
they're
it.
eating. We all know they're eating each other, right?
Right.
But I want to know how are we going to fix the plight, yeah?
How are we going to fix that?
Because we start with the dynamics that the gentleman said. He said that basically the darker skinned Africans amongst the Muslim collective, you find that the more melanated ones are mistreated, right? And he's saying, what could we do to fix that? And you start talking about black people eating black people.
Okay, good. Okay, let me tell you. Let me tell you how. There are two or three things. People need to appreciate the scholarship of the African tradition from the Muslim world. For example, Mauritania, people don't realize this, it's an African country. There are people in Mauritania who are basically black and Arab. It's a bit of a mix, it's a cocktail from that perspective, yeah? And Mauritania historically has been probably the house of two great empires, the Ghanaian Empire and the other empire is the Mali Empire, yeah? And so Mauritania people need to know that even now there's a rich tradition there of Islamic scholarship, of African Islamic scholarship. So I feel like from a Muslim perspective, if people were to direct their attention to places like that, and are actually able to see the maneuverings of these individuals living in that indigenous land, they will be able to have a better understanding of the contribution of Africans to the African tradition.
So why is it? So why is it? Yeah, like you said, there's a rich scholarship. Yeah, you have the family Shanakata.
Yeah, the Shanakata. Yeah,
and you have other renowned scholars. Yeah, from Ethiopia, from Mali, from Ghana, and whatever. Why is it that these people are not as celebrated as people like,
that's right,
for example, Shawkani from Yemen?
Money. But the reason why is money. Shawkani is like we're talking about 200-300 years ago. I want to keep it contemporary in it. Money. Here's where we can make a difference, because that's the question you put. How do we elevate the voices of those people, or amplify the voices of those people who are not necessarily have their voice amplified? For example, in the Muslim world, you have a discussion when it comes to scholarship of Saudi scholars. Why? Because Saudi Arabia, of all the Muslim countries, has the most, you could say, money, but also has a lot of scholars. Yeah. So those two things go hand in hand. We need to here in the West also redirect our attention to other African countries. You know, I want to say one thing as well. I feel like, do you know, from a
Mauritania.
Yeah, please, come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm someone who's spent a lot of time researching about West Africa. And
Can I put this on you, please?
Yeah, from an Islamic perspective and a non-Islamic perspective. Now, the question or the reason why we do not know about this is very simple. It has to do with imperialism.
Yeah.
Mali and West Africa are Francophone countries. And the Francophone countries are not internationally connected as English, Anglo-Saxon countries. Nigeria is more in the world than Mali because Nigeria is a direct descent of the British Empire. Now, if you were in France, or if you were able to speak French, you will find a lot of classical works by French, Malian scholars. The reason why we don't know them is because we don't speak French.
Well,
that's one of the reasons.
Well, you say we as in black.
We don't speak French.
But the Arabic works, though.
We don't speak French. We're talking from a Western perspective, isn't it? We don't speak French, and French, the language, is not an international language the same way English is.
Well, it kind of is, man.
It is not. It's not. There's many works from Malian scholars that are translated into French, but they're not translated to English. Okay. We have that a lot.
So the blacks
Mali.
Not benefit from that.
No. Another thing. Just another thing.
One second.
Go ahead.
I know 10 top scholars that have converted their French stuff into English. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, it doesn't add to. Okay, fair enough. What I'm trying to say is that Mali in particular was sieged in 2011.
It was,
by Al-Qaeda affiliated groups, and they tried to get rid of all these books. Mali has a tradition where the library is connected to families. Every single library is connected to families. They were able to smuggle over 1 million books out of Timbuktu, right? Now, the problem I have with a lot of people who don't know or don't research this stuff is that they portray as if no one cares about that stuff. If no one cared about that stuff, you know what would have happened? What happened in Iraq when the Mongolian came and got rid of all the books, and that the rivers of Basra were filled with ink from the books, right? That didn't happen in Mali. The people of Mali organized themselves. In fact, Christian organizations around the world came and started manuscripting these books. So there's interest in it, but because it's not, because there's not too much French soft power around the world, it seems as if no one cares about it and no one talks about it. Now the question you're saying is, why is it not in the Arabic world? Then yes, we have a case here. Why is it that Arabs are not focusing on that?
Well, can I push that forward, right? So the original question that I was pushed forward was, why is it? Why is it that in the Muslim collective, the dark sub-Saharan African, as you refer to them, are most mistreated, right? That was the question.
Most treated where?
Well, I would say literally all over, if I'm being honest. Anywhere where you find, well, so if you have mixed Muslim communities, then the dynamics tends to be that the ones of African origin are close to the bottom, unless you've seen something different.
Have you been to France? From an Arab perspective, bring this in a little bit.
Actually, just before you say that,
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I think another thing we need to understand, because it's a lot of misconceptions here. In West Africa, there are about 100 million Muslims. 100 million Muslims. So I don't think that in West Africa you would have that problem.
No, you still do. Like, for example, in Ghana, there is a.
from Ghana?
I'm from Ghana.
Okay.
There's a big Lebanese community there.
Okay.
And they're Muslims. I don't like to exacerbate the issue of marriage and interracial marriage, but it's a big thing, people throwing themselves at the Lebanese community from amongst the Muslims and non-Muslims, because they want this whiter, lighter skinned baby, and they think they'll be more prosperous in the world. So they are effectively selecting another ethnic group over their ethnic group because of some sort of inferiority complex. That is amongst Muslims and non-Muslims, even within the African diaspora. So even when you go to, I was speaking to a Ghanaian friend last week, if you line up in a queue in a restaurant,
Post-colonial legacy.
it is post-colonial,
I agree with that.
Definitely. So you line up in a restaurant, and the whiter, fairer person is seen to, because he's perceived to have money and influence and leverage, whilst the darker, more melanated people are left to the back. Now,
would you say the same thing about Senegal, where almost everyone is dark as one of the darkest people?
I would go as I don't know the case of Senegal, but I would go as far as to say that if a lighter skin, maybe Pakistani or Arab, came into Senegal, he would. They still treat their own people good, but they would offer him more courtesy.
Because most of them are bottom of the chain.
It's like this, the question was asked because we're looking for solutions, right? So if there is a mistreatment of black people mistreating themselves and other groups mistreating and contributing to it, what is the solutions? Now, what I push forward to my black Muslim brothers is for you guys to come together collectively, who are black, and work on your own issues directly, because a non-black Muslim is not going to understand what you're going through. Now I think that is a very good tangible solution you can do.
Also, Raven, I get that. We as black people, we need to, or black Muslims even, need to look at our own, internalize our own problems and come out with solutions. But in the spirit of an Islamic ethos, we're all supposed to be brothers, regardless of ethnicity.
This is why I have to interject.
My thing is, as someone who claims to be an adherent of the faith, there are tenets that you must carry out, From those tenets are not discriminating on basis of ethnicity. So,
see, you're using that discrimination, right? You are reacting to discrimination, right? So it's like this: you don't have the power. The people who have the power have placed you low. Because you're low, it makes sense for you to come together to come back again. You have been psychologically conditioned to feel that by you working on your own issues that was imposed upon you, you're then mistreating other people.
No doubt.
But no other Muslim groups feels that way. Not one.
That's what I'm saying, is they need to take their foot off our necks as our brothers. They're not supposed to be treading on us.
It isn't just a black Muslim issue, it actually is a black issue. Whether you're Christian, whether you're...
Can I put a little thing in?
Whether you're Christian, whether you're atheist, whatever it is, there's the belief that if black people help themselves, they're mistreating other people. Does that make sense? If black people help themselves, they're mistreating... Bro, you hear this, right? So if black people help themselves, they're mistreating other people. That's not true.
But you know what? Can I interject with one contribution? I feel like what's being said here, do you know, sometimes what you've got to remember is this, when you keep saying that black people need to think of their own issues, that's fine. They do, in a sense, just like anyone else needs to think about their own issues. It's not one dimension. But there's one thing I want to put forward, is that we need to remember that actually Africa, and West Africa in particular, was responsible for its own empire. This is actually quite unique in a sense, and I'll tell you what I mean by this, In the Muslim world, Can I just explain what way though? I'll say it. Go on. So in the Muslim world, you had successive empires, Abbasid Empire, Umayyad Empire, Ottoman Empire, whatever, The Africans in the West African region were never part of that. And I'll tell you what, that's a good and a bad thing. And the bad thing is that they couldn't share the economic wealth. The wealth didn't circulate in the same way. The good thing is that it allowed for independence. No, it didn't circulate in the same way, because when you had the Abbasid Empire, all the taxes were being collected and obviously being...
Do you know the trade on the River Niger?
Yeah, there's just trade.
Yeah,
But
so if you understand the trade, going from the River Niger, going up to Egypt, reason why Mansa Musa flooded Egypt with gold.
They were connected.
So
there was trade between them. There was
so
trade.
understanding the trade was still going.
Yeah, that's
through.
good. That's good.
So understanding they were a part of that trade.
No, what
It's just that
I don't think you understand. The point I'm making to you is as follows. Yeah, the point I'm making to you is that the West African empires, which were by the way, they were independent. So there's two misconceptions that need to be immediately rectified. There's always this understanding that okay, black Muslims lived in the context of Arab supremacy, which is something unfortunately in this part. I'm not saying you guys.
In the Mali Empire, no.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, good.
They were Muslims and traditional Africans.
Good.
They admired the Arab community.
Good.
So they replicated
the olden glory days you're talking about. Today we're not there. So I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm with that. We have to look back.
But then I could say then, do you know the war the war that happened in, like, even for instance in Nigeria, which there was a war between religion and tribe.
Yeah.
That was constantly in West Africa.
Exactly.
Understanding that.
What I'm trying to say, there's two things I want to put forward. It might be a bit antagonizing, but whatever it is, yeah.
That's fine, put it forward.
What point one is that this misconception of okay, you have a firm Arab post-colonial master or colonial master and an African subject, yeah. Yeah, it's true that Arabs did trade African slaves.
Yeah,
it's true. But did you also know that black Africans traded African slaves?
Yeah. Because the only reason why most of them traded is because they were under a supremacy that was.
Bro, look,
you have crime.
No. You can disagree with that. Go on.
Say one thing, yeah. Obviously, we know.
Let respect say what it is.
Do you know that also black people they had Arab slaves?
Yes. Yeah. Good point.
See, the fact of the matter is, the Portuguese was introduced to slavery by the Arabs, innit? You get?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we know that those Arabs would have been Muslim, innit? You know?
Yeah, all right. Same thing with.
Not necessarily.
But you got.
Listen, hold on. Let's get out of there. We have primary. We have primary blame and secondary blame, right?
I don't want to forget.
Because we don't want to get off it, right? Primary blame and secondary blame, right?
Yeah.
So the primary blame is the people who dominate most, right? In that particular context, in the Arab slave trade, it was the Arabs. Now the second.
But what are we talking about? Because for example, if we talk about the triangular trade slave.
No, what you just mentioned, you said the Arabs.
Yeah. No, there's two things here. Now I'm saying generally in history is a big thing, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm saying generally, if we look at the triangular slave trade, the most responsible people for the slave trade were white people and black people. Nothing to do with Arabs. Nothing to do with Arabs.
No one said it was.
Okay, good. So here you have to get away from the idea that there's some kind of tension between the two kinds of people.
Tribalism in Africa,
I'm with that.
Prisoners of war.
Yeah, they weren't prisoners of war. They were slaves. They were slaves that being
serfdom.
Yeah, that's almost slavery, anyways, in itself.
Yeah, it's still serfdom.
Okay, cool. But they're being sold.
The reason why we don't, cause you see chattel slavery.
Yeah.
It was something so completely different from the same word.
Cool, but when we say that things are being human beings are being sold, though.
I want to say from before is, you see, if all white people love black people tomorrow, it does not solve. Does it solve our